It's Thursday, 11 o'clock. It's time for this week's Watch Drop. This week, we've got a real mix of so many amazing watches. It's going to be really difficult to narrow it down, but we've got a lot of Reversos in this week that are really worth a mention. JLC is one of those brands that we get a lot of here at Subdial, and it's really lovely to have such a nice mix on the table today. I'm going to call out a few of my favourites and we'll deep dive into a couple of really special references. Primarily, the case size that we have on the table today is what's called the Grande Reverso. And I like the Grande Reverso. I'm usually a guy that likes smaller watches. However, the Reverso is a very sporty dress watch. It was obviously designed originally as a watch to be worn at polo matches. So you're able to flick it over and protect the watch face from random balls being hit in your direction. So the fact that it's a sports watch lends itself to being a slightly larger case size. A lot of people are always coming to us and saying, I don't know whether I should go for a Cartier or a Reverso because the tank is very similarly shaped and designed. But I would always encourage people to think about using a larger case size when it comes to Reverso for exactly that reason. That said, the first one I'm going to talk about today is a smaller case size. And there's been a real resurgence recently in the smaller case sizes at JLC. Last year, towards the end of last year, they reintroduced a more sort of traditional size, which is closer in line with the original 1931 design. And this case size is very similar to that. What I love about this is that you've got a day-night complication. So it's two-sided, one with a lovely silvery white dial and the other with a black with white indices. But the indices have so much character. When I look at it, it reminds me of the Metro in Paris, where you have that really interesting font that says Metropolitan. And it's just like that. It sends me right back to Paris, this dial. It's white gold, so it's a hefty thing despite its diminutive size. And I just adore it. I love the contrast. I love the complication. I love the fact you're effectively getting two watches in one because you've got a silver dial and a black dial. It's a great watch. Well worth some attention. Moving through. Here we have a rose gold skeletonized Grande Reverso. So on the reverse side, you have a really interesting and well-finished skeletonized movement. And there's a lot to see here. The attention to detail is brilliant. You've got some lovely interior angles, which is something that you are often associating with high-end watchmaking. And the condition and quality of this is really remarkable considering the price. It's a bigger case and it's not an ultra thin. So it's a bit of a chunky slab of gold on your wrist. But I like that. I think it feels expensive. It feels like something that you're going to be reminded of throughout the day when you're wearing it. Really lovely example. Really lovely. Moving on to something that's a little bit more pared back when it comes to the Reverso design. Here we have a stainless steel example with a matte white dial. There are no second complications at all, so you've just got the original stainless steel case back, which I suppose you could use as a sort of a mirror if you really wanted to. But it's a lovely high polish design. And one of the characteristics that I really like about modern Reversos is the companionship, the pairing with the Fagliano straps. So you have this almost like a sort of tweedy kind of finish with a little bit of high polish leather at the top. And that brings it to a much more casual, sporty vibe. Whereas later on down the line, we'll talk about these examples here from the boutique special editions that are paired with alligator. It's a very different look for me and what I tend to wear, sort of jumpers and chinos, that sort of vibe. That's absolutely spot on. There are several similarities between this example and the next special edition. In fact, a limited edition. This is the 1948 ultra thin, and it's an example that was only produced in about 100 pieces. It has the same matte white dial, but this time, rather than having the silver applied indices, these are blued. So you have that blue hands plus the blue indices. And when you catch it in the right light, it's the most incredible contrast between the white dial and the blued indices. It's such a lovely thing, but it really does need that blast of sunlight to really bring it out. I like the square subdial at the 6 o'clock position, and because it's an ultra thin, it's so light and comfortable. Really lovely, lovely watch, and completely overlooked, frankly. The 1948 line seems to have been eclipsed somewhat by the 1931 special editions, which we'll come to. And I don't know why that is, because from a characteristics perspective, it's got all of those tick boxes: ultra thin, comfortable, sporty dial. It's a spot on watch, really is lovely. So now we're going to move on to three of probably my favourite Reversos, and these are the recent boutique special editions. In around 2015-2016, to commemorate the opening of certain boutiques around the world, JLC released a number of really pared back, traditional looking, modern steel Reversos. And we've got three great examples here. First up, the Blue dial. This is a dual time, so on one side you have a white second time zone with a day-night indicator, but on the front you've got nothing more than a matte blue with silvered hands, applied silver finish indices, and just a crisp white Reverso. Nothing that says JLC or Jaeger-LeCoultre, but just that minimalist finish, which works so well. I adore this style. It's one of those things that I look at and I think about the recent Stella-esque dials from Rolex and their Oyster Perpetual line. The matte, colourful dials are just such fun. I wish I had a collection full of all the different colours, frankly, because then you could really pair them with an outfit of a day, and it's a bit sad, but I adore it. I really do. I love the colours. It's such a playful thing. Moving on to another example of the boutique special editions. Here we have an execution which is a dual time, similar to the Blue dial. One side we have a guilloche black dial with a day-night indicator, but on the front you have the most minimalist dial that I've seen from them. It is a white, crisp white dial, similar to those that we've seen before, but with blackened hands and blackened indices. You could wear that in a black and white movie and it would really sort of evoke that sort of 1950s design. I love the simplicity of the Reverso text. Again, these boutique dials have that, and they don't have any reference to JLC at all, but you're just sort of sent back in time when you look at this watch. I adore it, and it's one of the rare examples of a Reverso that I think wears so well with a black alligator strap. It's a very smart execution. I think it's a must for any Reverso collector. Finally, moving on to my favourite all-time Reverso. This is a 1931 boutique edition for London. It was released in 2015 to commemorate the opening of the Bond Street boutique, and it has a British Racing Green matte green dial. Again, the simplicity of the Reverso text, no reference to JLC, but with silvered hands and indices. And that's lovely. I think it pairs brilliantly with the green alligator strap. I'd probably go for something slightly more casual. But what's really lovely about this is as you turn it over, you're greeted with a beautiful laser-etched picture of Big Ben and Westminster Palace, which I think is so lovely. If you're in any way affiliated with London, whether you live here or whether you're an expat and you used to live here or have any association with the city, this is one of those watches that brings you right back to London, and you can wear it and understand all of those little characteristics that are so British, with the British Racing Green, the Houses of Parliament, the picture of Big Ben, and it's an edition of 26 pieces. So really, really rare. You're very unlikely to meet anyone else at a watch meet that has another one of these. And it's just a great talking point. I love this watch so much, and whenever I consider buying a Reverso, I always think, should I wait and get one of these when one eventually pops up? But there are very few that come into market. So if you are one of those people like me that have been sitting patiently waiting for one to hit the market, now's your time. To close out the video this week, I'm going to talk about entry level, a mid-level, a high-end watch that are my picks from the week. And just because George the cameraman loves it, I'm going to talk about this blingy Rolex. So first up, the entry level. Now, this is a Calatrava style steel watch from Vacheron. You've got the teardrop lugs, you've got an eggshell dial which is completely unfractured, shows a tiny bit of patina, but it's so even. I mean, you really can't fault it. It's probably a 50s or 60s execution, but the condition is brilliant. And for under £4,000, I think it's a no-brainer, frankly. It's a brilliant, brilliant watch. And I also love the strap choice. For a mid-level choice, around the £10,000 mark, we've got this sector dial Jules Audemars from Audemars Piguet. This is, I think, the third time that we've had one of these into stock. And every time I see it, you see that gloss black dial with the matte black subdials for the chronograph. And it's so captivating. It's a lovely, lovely watch. The curvature of the case, both in profile but also in 2 dimensions as well, it just makes it feel like a sporty, crisp, contemporary watch, even though it's probably 30 years old. It's a lovely watch. We don't see them very often, but when we do, it's one that always catches my eye. Finally, at the high end, we have an Journe Chronomètre Souverain. This execution is fairly early, actually, compared to some of the later designs. It's a platinum case, and interestingly, it's one of the few watches that has a gold dial. And the indices, the Arabic numerals around the outside, were pressed through from the reverse side. And so you have this very interesting finish within a high polish over the top, versus the later cases, which came, much more recently, in the last 5 years or so, where the indices were applied. I think this takes a lot more skill and craftsmanship. And when it comes to an independent brand like Journe, where you're spending top money on these things, it's nice to have a little bit more of a talking point. This case and this dial has exactly that. Very monochrome looking watch, paired with a very bright green strap, which I also love. Very good, very on trend for this week. And to wrap things up, I've got to talk about this very heavy Platinum Day-Date in 36mm with a factory diamond bezel, diamond indices, and a silvered dial. I mean, it's a statement piece. There's no doubt about it. But as someone that adores a 36mm Day-Date, and I'm wearing my 1803 here today, I can absolutely see why someone would want to pair an outfit with something that is very look at me, let's say. It's so heavy, reassuringly built with a robust bracelet and clasp. It's a great watch and an absolute icon. I'd love to know your opinion. Is this something that's a little bit too blingy, or would you stick with a basic Day-Date and a fluted bezel? Let me know in the comments. So that's this week's drop. Over 60 watches hitting the site, and a real mix of so many watches that I didn't get to touch on. I really hope that you'll hit the site, check out the Reversos and everything else. Thanks for watching. See you next week.